job.
Well, as you saw, the president tried to say that this was going to go away. It didn't go away. And to your point, Joe, about testing, to back up a little bit on two fronts. Number one, if we had followed the warnings of the World Health Organization, if we had not fired everybody in the pandemic office, we would have had testing early on. And perhaps some of his economic goals would be possible if we could do rapid tests across the country, if we could figure out if there are any asymptomatic carriers out there. We would have a roadmap. We would not be flying blind. And for some parts of the country, it might be possible to reopen a lot quicker. But we don't have that because the president botched that. So then it gets to a question for the Republicans, for Republicans who still won't speak out about what's right here, speak out about the science involved, because you got to pull back. And you've got to look at this presidency, and this is what we've come to. We let it go. The Republicans let it go when he constantly attacked the media from the get-go, called us crazy, called us oversensitive. Let it go. It's fine.
But beyond that, he said that the way we were covering this,
right,
the way we were warning Americans about this day coming and that it would get even worse, he said that coverage was a hoax.
But I'm backing up to the beginning. Republicans let it go when he chipped away at our democracy, undermining the media, when he chipped away at our democracy and cozied up to dictators, when he chipped away at our democracy and worked with a foreign leader to get dirt on a political rival. Are we really going to find out the hard way? Are we going to find out the hard way that it is not okay to let a president run roughshod over our democracy and go completely unchecked? No. Are we going to find out the hard way? Are Republicans and Democrats and American citizens going to find out by watching their families get ill from a virus that the president tried to play down?
Well, Mika,
by getting ill from a virus that the president reopens the economy before it's possible scientifically. How far are we going to let him go?
Well, Mika, you said, are they going to let him do this? They already have. There are 1,000 people in America, over 1,000 people now dead from a virus, from a pandemic that Donald Trump said was going to go away, that it only infected 5 people and it was going away, that it had only affected 15 people and that it was going away, that it was going to magically go away and we didn't need to worry about it. And here we are. Again, we'll show you the numbers later on this morning. We'll show you the trend lines that we showed you yesterday. This is going to get much worse. And Jonathan Lemire, right now in New York City, as I said, it's a war zone in New York's hospitals. This country that suffered so much on 9/11, that gave so much of its heart and soul on 9/11. New York City cops coming down with this. New York City firefighters coming down with this. Nurses and doctors, are those firefighters now on the front lines? Are those cops on the front lines? Hospital administrator, attacks. And guess what? As we look at an abandoned Times Square in a crisis that the president said was going to go away, we have nurses who are dying, by the way, nurses that the New York Post reports are forced to wear garbage bags because they don't have protective gear. They are literally draping garbage bags over them in this fight against a pandemic that the White House has been warned could kill over 2 million Americans, more Americans than died in every war since 1776. And yet this president is still whistling past the graveyard. And it's nurses and doctors and our senior citizens who are effectively being told to go to hell.
The image you just showed of Times Square there, stark and empty, is eerie and scary, but also representative of a city that's doing its part. People are staying home. They are social distancing themselves. They're doing what they can. And at least right now, they have largely been, it seems, abandoned by the president, who up until a short time used to live here. Trump, of course, now, let's remember, he doesn't live in New York anymore. He changed his residence to Florida a few months back. Joe, you said it, the stats are sobering. Yesterday, New York City, the mayor's office put out a statistic at 10 a.m. yesterday. There had been 199 deaths from this coronavirus in New York. By 6 p.m., it had surged to 280. So that's only an 8-hour gap, and 81 people died. That's more than 10 per hour. You showed it there. We have reports of nurses having to wear plastic garbage bags because they don't have enough equipment. That same hospital where that's happening, a worker died. At a couple of hospitals, Bellevue Hospital, New York University Hospital, we are seeing them make makeshift morgues. They're closing down streets so they can build up tents, so they can be prepared to take the influx of bodies that are expected to come because of this death. We have talked about testing. It was just a week or so ago where the president and the vice president promised drive-through testing at Walmarts and Targets. That hasn't happened yet, at least not in any sort of large-scale effort across the country. The president yesterday...
By the way, as you're talking about testing, Jonathan Lemire, in the county where Donald Trump loves to travel to, Palm Beach County, you can't get tests. The president said on March 6th, if you want a test, you can get a test. In all of Palm Beach County, there are no tests to be had in the third largest county in the state of Florida. This is in the state of Florida where senior citizens are. So many senior citizens are, Jonathan. And you have the president's people writing op-eds and telling cable news reporters that, you know, if seniors die, seniors die. You have Republicans that are lieutenant governors in Texas saying, well, you know what, grandparents, they just, you know what, they're going to be willing to die so the economy doesn't go down too badly. This is the new argument that's being made by Donald Trump's supporters that, yes, a lot of people are going to die. And, well, that's not as troubling as a bad economy. But go ahead, Jonathan. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, the point is well taken, and that is, you were right. That has become the rallying cry from certain parts of the right, suggesting that this is a sacrifice that some Americans will be willing to make to keep the economy going. Obviously, it's in everyone's interest for the economy to do well, but public health should be coming first. The president here, we saw his tweet yesterday. He laid it out pretty plainly for us. He accused the media of that the media is the driving force behind the efforts to keep the country closed, to keep it shuttered. And he says it's because the media wants that to happen because it would be detrimental to his reelection efforts. And politics are at the forefront of his mind, according to our reporting and others, as he looks at this. But it's not the media that's suggesting the country remain closed. It are scientists, it is doctors, and perhaps most importantly, the nation's governors who are at the hot spots right now. Governor Cuomo here in New York, obviously California, Washington State. It's seemingly by the day we have more and more states advising lockdowns, suggesting people stay home for the next 2 or 3 weeks, Joe. And it is only going to get worse. And I keep coming back to what Governor Cuomo said yesterday, Joe, that New York is going through it now, even though its apex is probably still a couple weeks away. But New York is just foreshadowing what's going to happen to the rest of the country. Other parts of the country, Florida included, are going to be dealing with the brunt of what New York is going through right now.
Well, I hear one doctor after another saying Florida is going to be the next hotspot. Let's show that image of the New York Post again, if we can. Because can you imagine, Mika, more people are going to be dying of the coronavirus in the United States by just multitudes than died on 9/11. But could you imagine if we required New York City cops and New York City firefighters to be fighting the fires and the death and the destruction that day in garbage bags?
Yeah.
The people that you are looking at in the front of the New York Post, those are our firefighters. Those are our police officers on 9/11, except they're going to be working on a virus that will end up killing more Americans that were killed in Iraq, killed in Afghanistan, killed in the entire war on terror. And what we're talking about war, because the president brought this up, Mika, before surrendering. You know who we're throwing away when Larry Kudlow and Stephen Moore and Donald Trump and people for Catholic magazines are saying, people, you know what? People have to die. There's a story.
Senior citizens, grandparents.
Well, and there was a story in the New York Times about a lawyer who, big spread about a lawyer who influenced the president with two arguments: that senior citizens were going to die anyway, they were unproductive, and they cost a lot of money. They cost a lot of money.
Really?
Right? So there's the logic that the president has taken forward. And who's being abandoned? It's World War II vets who gave their entire life, now in their 90s, the frailest among us, and they're being abandoned. You're seeing Korean War vets in the golden years of their life, after giving their all to their country, being abandoned by this president. You're seeing Vietnam vets who went through hell, not only at war, but when they came home, they were treated like garbage. But you know what? They still love their country. They still wave their flag. They're still proud that they went and fought for their country when they were called, while people like Donald Trump stayed home and went to elite colleges and dodged the draft. But those Vietnam vets, they're being left behind. And it seems that Republicans now are making the argument, let the World War II vets die, let the Korean War vets die, let the Vietnam vets die, let everybody in that generation die, because we're worried about Boeing. We want Boeing, who got, by the way, a $17 billion bailout by this package after killing people because of their selfishness, because of their greediness. I mean, all these other countries, all these other companies with stock buybacks, the same thing happened there. We have Republicans. We have people like Lindsey Graham and Rick Scott more concerned about Boeing than unemployed people in their own state. Now, I understand with Rick Scott, because he cut unemployment benefits so low in Florida that Florida actually has the worst unemployment benefits in America because of Rick Scott. But Rick Scott was worried about unemployed Americans getting too much money, while he had no problem with Boeing getting a $17 billion bailout after killing people because of their selfishness and their greediness. Mika, the priorities, I've never in my life seen the priorities laid out in such a stark way between one party and the other. Now, as you know, I'm not a Democrat. There are a lot of things that Democrats do that drive me crazy. I watched the first Democratic debate, and I just looked at wonderment and at how far left Twitter had pulled the party. But there is no doubt, if you're talking about the party of life right now,
right?
As the American conservative wrote, right now, these conservatives are making Democrats who are pro-choice actually look more pro-life, because they're only worried about the unborn. It is the born. It is the weakest among us. It is senior citizens who they're ready to euthanize because they want Boeing's corporate earnings to not dip too low. They want to make sure that people that own businesses in their district or in their states will keep giving them campaign contributions. So I don't know what, I grew up in a Baptist church, and I heard a lot about abortion and on the front end of life and euthanizing seniors on the other side of life.
Insanity.
And let me just be clear. If we have scientists and we have doctors and we have medical professionals who've spent their lives using their God-given skills to save lives, and you have the ability to help them save lives, and you are telling the president not to do that, that is killing. That is, in fact, there's no way that you can say, well, abortion's bad, but killing a senior citizen, and by the way, it's now the nurse that died in the hospital was 48 years old and healthy. By the way, got bad news for you. A lot of 30 and 40-year-olds are getting this and dying of it. So this argument that we're going to just let senior citizens die because they're no longer productive. That's the argument that is taking hold in the Republican Party.
The president's a senior citizen.
Yeah.
Mitch McConnell's a senior citizen.
They're cloistered. They're protected. They're not like the 93-year-old Vietnam vet that's in a nursing home in Allentown, Pennsylvania right now, cut off from his children, cut off from his grandchildren. It's not like the 87-year-old grandmother who gave her entire life, maybe a single mom who raised the kids after their father may have left or their father may have died in a war. And now she's 87 years old and alone and scared in a nursing home where her children and grandchildren can't visit, can't even send them mail in some places, from what I've heard. And they're sitting there alone, afraid that they're dying, and they're hearing the president's aides say, people just, you know what? People are going to die. Let's just thin out the herd so America's GDP can rise faster. I don't know. I don't know who these people are that think this way, but they're out there, and their voices are growing stronger as more Americans die.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.